Everybody important in my
Mr.
team
Polsenberg, can you let Mr. Jones say his name first, then we'll get to you in 1 second.
No.
I'm going to redirect that you have to. Give it a second, please. Thank you. Mr. Jones just spoke. Okay. We're just trying to get folks, and I really appreciate the great camaraderie. A quick second. Make sure you're ready before I do that. Okay, we're back on the record in case 886110, State of Nevada versus Meta Platforms, Inc. Same council, same parties. Council, before we move forward, is there something someone wanted to address?
Your Honor, we spoke with counsel during the break. I believe the state's ready to arrest and let Meta call its next witness, subject to the offer of proof that Mr. Jones described before, but I believe if that's necessary at all, we can reevaluate after examination of Meta's witnesses.
Okay, so you want to move forward with Meta, and you'll call your first witness, and the state reserves its right to do its offer of proof. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Meta calls to the stand Antigone Davis, please.
Okay.
Just go right on up there. That's okay. Once you're up there, please remain standing, raise your right hand, please call the court.
You do solemnly swear or affirm that testimony about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and the means of penalty of perjury. I do. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Sure. It's Antigone Davis, and it's spelled Antigone, and then Davis, Davis.
Appreciate it. Have a seat. Counsel, feel free to proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Davis, what's your role at Meta?
Well, my title is Global Head of Safety, and in that role, I work with teams across the company to secure the right policies for safety and make sure we're building the right technology for safety.
And how long have you worked at Meta?
It'll be 10 years in October.
And you described your role a little bit. Have you had that same role during your entire time at Meta?
My title has changed, but my core role has remained the same.
Broadly speaking, could you describe Meta's child safety efforts?
Yeah, broadly speaking, we try to put in place strict policies to ensure the safety of children. So these are policies that not only are designed to fight and identify child exploitation, but policies against the sexualization of minors, policies against adult nudity on the platform, child nudity. We then also have, in addition to those policies, tools that we use to try to ensure that people are safe. These can be default settings, these can be things like encryption, these can be other tools that we try to ensure people's safety, and then providing reporting and resources and support for users.
So you mentioned your team. Could you provide the court with a little more detail about the makeup of your team?
Yeah, my team is made up of a number of different people. Some are former prosecutors of child exploitation. I have someone on my team who is the former executive director of the National Network to End Domestic Violence. Someone on my team who was the vice president of policy and legal for the Family Online Safety Institute. We try to bring in people with a lot of expertise in this area.
Is child safety a priority for Meta?
Certainly it's a priority for Meta. It's been a priority since I've been there and well before I got there.
And is child safety an issue across the entire internet, across the entire range of social media providers?
Yeah, so we've seen, particularly on almost all of our safety issues, but in particular on child safety issues, that they do span the entire internet. We see people who are trying to commit harm on one platform, move from one platform to another platform with ease.
And do you see child predators and other bad actors evolving in their activities in terms of the way they pursue what they're trying to do?
Yeah, they're very adversarial. They are trying to find ways to get around our systems, to get around other platform systems. So we are constantly evolving the techniques that we use to do this work.
Broadly speaking, what resources does Meta devote to child safety issues and to safety work more broadly?
Yeah, so I would say since 2016, we've invested $20 billion in safety and security. To give you a sense of just in 2023, we invested $5 billion in 2023 alone. We have about 40,000 people working on safety and security at Meta.
So let's talk about Meta's services for just a minute. What are the main reasons, to your understanding, that people use Meta's Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger services?
Yeah, well, they use our services to connect with their family and friends, to pursue their interests and hobbies, to develop community. Those are by and large, most of the activity we see on the platform.
And in relation to teenagers in particular, what's your understanding of the main reasons that they use the Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger services?
All those very same reasons: to connect with their family, to connect with their friends, to connect with their grandma who might live across the country, to connect with friends who moved away from school. If they're interested in a particular issue, in a particular hobby, they will pursue those on the platform.
Let's talk about Messenger in particular. What is it?
Messenger is a messaging service where people can send a single message to another person, and another person can reply to those messages.
Do you have an understanding about the percentage of content on Messenger that presents issues of child exploitation?
Yeah, so let me start by saying billions of people. We have about 3.19 billion people using our daily active users. They're sending messages, multiple messages on any given day. And when we look at those messages and we see there's about, of the content that we find related to child exploitation, it's 0.0001% of those messages contain that content.
And what's the basis for that estimate?
Looking at the number of messages that we have and what we find in every quarter.
And what conclusion do you draw from that very small percentage of messages that involve child exploitation
The
issues?
overwhelming majority of the messages on our platform are messages that are lawful messages.
What is end-to-end encryption?
End-to-end encryption ensures that the message, the content of the message, is seen only by the person who sent it and the person who received it. It is encrypted in between.
What are the benefits of end-to-end encryption?
Well, the benefits are actually safety and security for our users as well as privacy. When people share their most intimate information in messages, in fact, we've seen people move more and more to messages to share that private information. In the context of teens, that can be everything from, many of them explore identity, their identity at that age, so their sexual orientation, and any questions they may have about their gender identity. They share personal information with their parents, so these are very private communications.
You mentioned the safety benefits of end-to-end encryption. Could you expand on that a bit?
Well, you can imagine if you're sharing and you expect that that information is between just you and the recipient, that information can be particularly important and can create vulnerabilities for you. I think even in the context of things like child exploitation, for example, you may have a teen who shares an intimate image with another teen in a message, in a private message. Someone can access that message. They use those images and will use those images to sextort minors. So it's really an issue of making sure that that content is secure because it creates a vulnerability for that person.
So you talked about teenagers in particular. Are there particular safety benefits for teenagers in end-to-end encryption?
Yeah, certainly the same benefits that you would find for an adult. The ability to share information privately, to know that it's secure, to know that it won't be used and create vulnerabilities for you. It's actually even really important for children who may be exploited. A significant amount of children who are exploited by people they know, and teens use messaging to reach out for help. And if those messages aren't secure, that interferes with their ability to do that safely.
Is end-to-end encryption a well-established technology for digital communication?
Yes, it's my understanding that most of the major messaging services are using it. So iMessage has been using encryption for, I believe, this was near 9 or 10 years. Google RSC has been using encryption since 2023. Many services are using encryption. It's the standard at this point.
So you mentioned iMessage, just for the court's benefit. Could you explain what iMessage is?
iMessage is messaging between one iPhone and another iPhone. Those messages are fully encrypted.
And do you have a feel of roughly the percentage of messages on the internet that are encrypted today?
I can't give an exact percentage, but I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80–90%.
Does Meta have an understanding that end-to-end encryption is something that consumers want?
Yes, we've seen that users are more and more moving toward a private experience, looking for privacy. Not only have users indicated an interest in us not seeing their messages. But even the FTC and others have indicated an interest in not having platforms like ours see that kind of data.
So I wanted to follow up on that a bit. Has Meta been encouraged by governments and civil rights organizations to adopt end-to-end encryption?
The FTC has guidelines where they talk about encryption. CBT has encouraged, EFF has encouraged. There's I think a child organization that Child International that's encouraged us as well. I mean, there are a number of organizations human rights organizations that have pushed for us to use encryption across messaging.
You mentioned EFF. What is that?
I hope I get this right. Electronic Frontier, I believe, Foundation.
And what is that?
It's a nonprofit organization that works on the rights of human beings for privacy, safety, and security.
Has the White House and the administration also made statements supporting end-to-end encryption?
Yes, the White House has made statements supporting encryption. Governments actually, in many cases, encourage people to use encryption across messaging.
Have civil rights advocates also urged industry to adopt end-to-end encryption?
Certainly, the ACLU has encouraged us to use encryption. In fact, we had part of our work in planning for this was to actually ask for a human rights impact assessment through an organization called BSR, and they also saw that there were human rights values to encryption.
Have business organizations encouraged end-to-end encryption?
Yes, business organizations have encouraged end-to-end encryption. They use end-to-end encryption. I believe there's an organization called the Chamber of Progress that has pushed for the use of and supports end-to-end encryption as well.
What does it mean to say default end-to-end encryption?
That means that it's automatically on for the user. It means that the user doesn't turn it on. It is actually part of that experience, and it aligns with what we expect when we send our messages.
When was the decision made by Meta to move to default end-to-end encryption?
We announced the decision, I believe, in 2019. Slightly prior to that, we also had made another announcement internally about that move as well.
Did you recognize that moving to default end-to-end encryption would require a rethinking of Meta's approach on child safety?
Certainly, when you know that part of our approach had been to scan the content of messages, that meant that we were going to have to think about how to change our approach to ensure that we could still open up other ways to detect signals of problems on the platform, that we can encourage reporting, additional reporting on the platform to find when problems had existed, to putting in place particular protections so that people wouldn't be able to find and interact with people on the platform for unwanted purposes.
So let's explain just a little bit more. Why did you need to rethink Meta's approach to child safety in connection with moving to end-to-end encryption?
Our approach involved a significant amount of scanning of content of messages, which creates some insecurity in those messages because we can't encrypt in that context. And so when we knew that we weren't going to be able to do that anymore, that meant that we needed to think about other ways to be able to detect harm. So for example, we started developing additional technologies to detect harm that we would find in groups where we would be able to then take action on them.
Did you view this as a change in the model and the approach to child safety?
Certainly a change in the model. I would actually probably argue in an improvement in many ways, because encryption provides important security and safety benefits to users. And so this meant looking at how we would keep that secure message and then also find other ways to detect. So yes, it was a change, a shift in the way we were doing things.
And did you and your team undertake a process for evaluating how to enhance some of these other tools in connection with moving to end-to-end encryption?
Yes, even at the time of announcement, we said that we were going to be doing that, consulting with safety experts and others to think through how to do that. And to give you a sense of some of the kinds of things that developed, we now, for example, adults over the age of 19 cannot directly message a minor if they're not already connected with that minor. We use signals that we've identified for potentially suspicious accounts, about 60 different signals. With those signals, we are able to, first of all, take action against accounts that may look like they are suspicious accounts and remove some of those accounts. But we also use those signals to prevent those accounts from, or to try to restrict those accounts from finding, following, and interacting with minors.
How long did you work on this process of changing the method and developing new techniques?
All the way back from 2019, we began looking at all these things, and it's still ongoing, and quite frankly, we will not stop doing that work. We will continue to do that work even after we're rolled out.
And just to be clear, when you said all the way back, could you just give us the time frame you're talking about?
So this is the last 4 to 5 years.
And was it a significant effort to develop these new techniques and to refine the company's approach in connection with child safety?
It was an incredibly significant effort. It took a large number of teams across the company working on this, huge investments. Some of the investments and money figures I mentioned earlier are related to that work.
So you mentioned a $5 billion figure before in 2023.
Yes.
Was that related to some of these efforts to
Some of
develop new processes around end-to-end
Certainly,
encryption?
some portion of that was absolutely.
So you talked about some of the ways that you enhanced this focus around child safety on preventative issues in connection with moving to end-to-end encryption. Let's talk about some of them. Can you describe some of the ways that the company refined or enhanced its approach on child safety in connection with end-to-end encryption?
Certainly, well, I mentioned some of the messaging restrictions that we've put in place. We also did some other things. So with the signals that we had identified for potentially suspicious behavior, we were able to identify where there might be an interaction that was problematic. So for example, if you see a minor trying to block or unblock somebody, that may indicate that there's a problem. We use those signals to then surface safety notices to minors to encourage them to either block that person, report that person, restrict that person. And by the way, that work actually increased reporting by minors between, I think it was like the first quarter of 2022 and the first quarter of 2023 by 75%.
So when you talked about signals in your last answer, are you talking about signals you could detect even with end-to-end encryption?
Yes, these are all signals that were designed thinking about that in play, that issue in place. How would we continue to be able to detect and play a role in ensuring the safety?
So what are some good examples of signals that you would be able to see even if messages are encrypted?
Yeah, so I mentioned the blocking and unblocking. If you see an account that may send out numerous requests to message or friend minors that they don't seem to be otherwise connected to. Sometimes people will make comments in our groups that may indicate a sexual interest in the child. Those types of signals we can use.
Did you undertake to develop enhanced detection technology?
Yes, so that's exactly what a lot of that work was finding detection technology that would enable us to find those things in groups, surface that, and then put those into the calculus for the actions that we might take.
Was that a significant investment to develop this new detection technology?
It was incredibly significant. First of all, I can speak to just some portions of it, but we took reports that we had made and looked all the way back through the trajectory of the report to understand all the different potential places where there may have been an opportunity to create harm or connection, and then use those to then look at how we could intercede. So it was sophisticated and complicated. It took a lot of investment of time.
Does this new detection technology that the company worked on over years to develop, does it allow Meta to detect conduct that violates child safety policies without screening content of messages?
Yes, certainly. So people do, many of these harms or participate in this type of activity in places that are public. So not only can we identify in groups, but we can identify through things that they may say underneath people's posts. We can identify in statements that they may have about a page that they've put up. So there are plenty of different places in which we can find this kind of activity and behavior.
So can you find this activity even if you're not able to review encrypted messages?
Yes, certainly. In fact, that's part of what we're doing. So that's how we're able, for example, to surface the safety notices that we do. We have had We also do something called network disruptions. This is where we will look at accounts that may indicate, for example, sexual interest in children in different public spaces, identify who other accounts that they are interacting with, and then look at that behavior, that network behavior. We've removed, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of accounts through those network disruptions.
Does the detection technology that Meta developed also help prevent bad actors and minors from connecting with each other in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what you, certainly as a parent, but in my role, what I really want to be focused on is how we prevent those risks in the first place. How do we mitigate those risks in the first place? When you get to detection, you're already, past that fact, and so a significant amount of investment is going into how do we prevent it, and that's everything from, as I mentioned earlier, not allowing adults over the age of 19 to message with minors, to using those signals to identify potentially suspicious accounts. To give you a sense of that, if you are identified, you may not be able to find that friend button to even reach out to make a friend request to a minor.
So you drew a distinction in your answer there between prevention and detection. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is if you're detecting after the fact, the harm has already happened. It's not unimportant to do. You certainly want to detect when something is happening, encourage user reporting, get those reports and be able to take action and remove those accounts. But really, anybody who cares about safety of kids is trying really hard to fundamentally prevent that in the first place. And that's why we put in place so many of those safeguards.
And when you distinguish between prevention and detection, what's an example of detection as compared to prevention?
Okay, so an example of prevention would be, we put in place, so when teens join Instagram, they're in a private by default account. That would be a preventative measure. Detection might be, for example, we see someone is interacting with a number of different minors. We will surface a safety notice. We will get a report from a user based on that safety notice. We will then be able to detect and remove that. Detection also could be, we use those signals that I mentioned earlier. There are about 60 of them. If you hit a certain threshold of those signals, we're going to remove your account. If we see that you're violating our child safety policies based on those signals, we're going to remove your account from them.
Now, had Meta been working on these issues around both detection and prevention even before 2019?
Certainly, we're always looking at the whole thing, but I think we focused significantly on how we were going to do that in a much more sophisticated and complex way.
And was one piece of detection that that you needed to deal with the fact that you weren't detecting anymore through screening content of messages?
Certainly, yeah.
And is that one of the reasons that the company moved toward a greater emphasis on this prevention?
Yeah, I think it's definitely why we put more emphasis on that.
When did Meta begin rolling out default end-to-end encryption?
In December of 2023.
By the time Meta rolled out the default end-to-end system after this years of work, have you made the enhancements to ensure a robust child safety program in this environment of encrypted messages?
Yes, we had, and we will continue to do so.
And were you confident about that you could provide a robust child safety program with encrypted messages?
Certainly, between the increasing reporting and the use of these different signals on the different sites, yes.
Did you see end-to-end encryption itself as part of this enhanced child safety program?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't really sort of overstate the kinds of things that people share in their messages. They share my own daughter has shared her social security number in messages to me. People share their their health issues, anxiety that they may be dealing with, particularly young people who are exploring their identity, understanding who they are. They presume that these messages are private and they share information that creates a vulnerability. And so protecting that information is essential to their safety.
So what's the net effect of implementing default end-to-end encryption together with all of these other enhancements and improvements that the company has made in its child safety programs? What's the net effect?
I think the net effect is a private, safer, more secure system for all of our users, including young people.
Now, during the process that the company was going through to look at ways to deal with a new environment with encrypted messages, were there concerns about whether there could be blind spots without the ability to screen content?
Well, if you're not screening content and you are no longer screening content, that is something that you're going to lose. So that might be thought of as a blind spot. That is why people spent so much time over the last 4 to 5 years really identifying other ways to detect this kind of behavior on the platform.
After all the work was done, years of effort, did you view the inability to screen messages as a major blind spot?
No, I don't think it's a major blind spot, and I also think that not being able to screen messages is actually essential to people's safety and security.
You mentioned that Meta developed enhanced systems for user reporting in connection with the move to end-to-end encryption. Have you seen positive results from that?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen about a 75% increase in reporting in Messenger by minors, and that includes on child safety issues.
And do you attribute that increase, that 75% increase in user reporting, to the enhancements in your technology for user reporting?
Absolutely. We did a number of different things. We made it easier to find and report. We also surfaced reporting at particular moments in time when we thought it would be most valuable. So there was a hesitancy to reporting, sort of offering up that reporting to encourage that kind of reporting. We also added a tag in our reporting that says child safety. All of these things were designed specifically to help with that.
In your experience, is user reporting an effective child safety tool?
It is. It's actually particularly effective because, first of all, in the way we've developed reporting within Messenger, they can share the content from their device back with us, so we have that content. It also actually is a very strong signal when the user, himself or herself, actually shares that report with us along with that additional information.
Can user reporting be more effective as a child safety tool than screening the content of messages?
Yeah, so a lot of the screening that happens of the content of messages is of sharing of content that law enforcement, for example, is not likely to action or to take action on. People share child exploitation material, unfortunately, because they may think it's in poor humor. Sometimes they will share it out of outrage. They're trying to get people's attention. We have to report all of that to NCMEC. I think NCMEC's own numbers say that somewhere in the neighborhood of like 65%, or 65% of the photos and 77% of the videos that are shared is that kind of viral sharing.
So what would that mean about, when you mention those statistics, what does that tell you about the value of screening the content of messages?
Well, it creates a lot of information that is not necessarily something that law enforcement is going to act on, whereas user reports, as well as some of the work that we've done in terms of detecting, actually provides for some very valuable reports that are more likely to get action.
Have you also continued to focus on parental controls for teens as you move to default end-to-end encryption?
Yes, so we have...
Objection leading.
Sustained.
No.
I said the objection needs to be asked. Thank you so much.
Let me re-ask it. Have you had work on parental controls related to end-to-end encryption?
We have done a significant amount of work on parental supervisory tools, and in particular in relation to Messenger and messaging, we actually provide parents with the visibility into who is in the teen's contact lists. Those are the people that actually can message the teen. So that actually helps a parent know who a teen may be messaging with.
Does Meta also have tools in place that it's developed for ensuring that young users are seeing age-appropriate content?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Are there tools that Meta has developed to focus on content young users see?
Yeah, so we have, I'll walk you through a number of our parental supervisory tools, but yes, we have tools that are designed to help teens, to ensure that teens are not interacting with age-inappropriate content. So there's something called a sensitive content control. It is set to the strictest setting for minors. That means that it's not just content that violates our policies that they're not seeing, but it's content that sits sort of on the edges of our policies, and that's work that we've done with experts. We also enable parents to see who a teen is following, who's following their teens. We also have parental controls that actually allow parents to set time limits around the amount of time that a teen can spend on the platform.
So you've described a number of enhancements and steps the company took over the last number of years in connection with moving to end-to-end encryption. To sum up, what's the result for child safety when you combine end-to-end encryption with these improved techniques and other programs and steps you described?
I think our users, including children, are in a safer, more secure messaging experience, broadly, that messaging experience with the use of encryption.
Was the decision to move to end-to-end encryption a decision to favor privacy over security?
No, I think it's
Or privacy over safety, I'm sorry.
privacy over safety. It's not a scale where you say privacy is over here and safety is over here. Privacy, safety, data security, all of those things work together to ensure an individual's safety on the platform. They can't be pulled apart in that way or weighed one against the other.
Did end-to-end encryption reduce safety on Messenger?
No, I think end-to-end encryption has actually increased safety. If you think of the wide range of harms that people may be subjected to, everything from identity theft to sextortion, encryption plays a protective role against a wide variety of crimes.
So what's your view as to whether the move to default end-to-end encryption is a benefit for consumers?
I think it's ultimately a benefit for consumers. To sort of give you maybe a pointed example of what I'm talking about, you have, as I mentioned earlier, users who may share their sexual orientation in a message. If someone is able to hack that information, it just puts them in a very vulnerable position. For a teen, that could mean something as simple as being made fun of in school, but in certain parts of the world, and even in this country, that information can mean that they're killed. So this is really delicate personal information as messages, and encryption is part of security and safety.
Let's turn to something that you talked about earlier. You had mentioned reporting of CSAM to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, you call that. And can you describe that reporting process to NCMEC?
Yeah, so the way if we have an indication that something that in the context of a federal law violates those laws, child exploitation, content shares that kind of content, a photo or a video or image, we provide a cyber tip to NCMEC. In that cyber tip, we will provide that information to NCMEC. We'll provide the account information, the last known IPs. We provided a variety of information as required by law.
Do you provide those cyber tips to any individual states?
No, we provide them only to NCMEC.
So then how do the states get the cyber tips?
NCMEC has its own review process, and through that review process, it then sends different reports to the states.
Does Meta get systematic feedback from NCMEC on where it's sending the cyber tips?
No, in fact, we actually don't have the kind of systematic feedback we would have liked to have seen to do some of the work in this area that we're doing.
So after Meta reports a cyber tip to NCMEC, does Meta know what happens with it in terms of where NCMEC sends it?
The only way we would have some way of really knowing that would be if law enforcement used that cyber tip to provide a request for data from us, or in a specific case of outreach one way or the other.
Talking about CSAM more broadly, is this a problem that's unique to Meta?
No, in fact, a large part of the investments that we've made over the last number of years have been because this problem happens across the internet. In fact, you'll see people do some of that activity on our platform and then take part of that activity to another platform. So we've invested in something, for example, called Project Lantern. We helped develop some of the technology behind Project Lantern. It's basically a tool that comes from the Technology Coalition, which is a coalition of members of industry trying to fight this crime. And it allows us to share data signals with each other to fight this crime.
What's the purpose of Project Lantern? What's it trying to achieve?
It's trying to prevent this kind of activity from happening on the internet broadly.
And that means where predators may work with different services and.
Yeah, so you might see, for example, on our platform, a predator try to reach out to someone or connect with someone and then move to another platform to message with somebody or continue that engagement back and forth. And so we can share sometimes in the detection that we do, we may find information that's worth passing on to another platform that says, hey, we're seeing something over here that may be happening on your platform, you may want to look into it.
As you understand it, how does Meta measure up to other industry participants regarding child safety?
I think we've taken a significantly proactive and industry-leading approach in this area. Everything from that investment, for example, in Project Lantern, to investment in technology, something called Take It Down that NCMEC has. We helped to build the technology behind Take It Down to fund that. We've played an industry-leading role. I'm part of the Technology Coalition. I sit on their board, part of that executive committee to try to drive advancements in this area.
Does the volume of reports of CSAM to NCMEC, does it vary? Does it go up and down?
Yeah, it can go up and down on any given month or even week. You can have something that goes viral, for example, which is shared repeatedly across the internet that can create a spike in reporting. You can see a drop because something happens, a glitch happens in technology on any one of the platforms. So it can go wildly up and down in any given month even.
Has Meta gotten feedback from law enforcement that these reports of CSAM are not particularly helpful to them?
Well, certainly there's a large bucket of reports that they don't find particularly helpful. They've asked NCMEC to basically label those reports as informational to help them get to the reports that are more likely that they will take action on.
And has Meta been asked recently to put these reports into batches rather than sending them individually?
Yeah, so
Objection leading.
Has Meta been asked to change its reporting format for CSAM?
Yes, so in particular in relation to some of this viral sharing, you can have a single piece of content that's not new, that may have been on the internet for a long period of time, that keeps circulating over and over again. And they've asked basically for us to batch all of that into one report so that law enforcement and themselves, for that matter, don't have to look through thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of reports. They can actually just look at that one report because it's the same content.
With the implementation of default end-to-end encryption, will the information that Meta provides to law enforcement change?
There will be some information that will be very similar. So for example, with user reports, we're still going to be in a position to provide content. We also will continue to be able to provide a whole host of metadata. So this is the sender, the recipient, when they sent that message, the last known IP of that message, the frequency of the messaging, all that will remain a part of the reports.
Will Meta still be able to provide useful information to law enforcement after fully implementing end-to-end encryption?
Yes, I think we will continue to report millions of reports to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, many of which will have content, and arguably, because a large portion of these will be user reports, they will be much more actionable than many of the reports that they're getting now.
Could you expand on that point a little bit when you said there would be much more actionable? What do you mean by that?
Well, you'll have the user's report, the indication from the user of what's happening, which is a very important signal as to what may be happening. As I mentioned earlier, a large number of the reports that go to NCMEC, there's no indication of a sexual interest in the child. And so those reports are much more complicated to actually action or do anything with. Here you will have a user who's indicated that the harm is occurring. You'll have the whatever content they've shared through that reporting, as well as that metadata as well, if law enforcement follows up and asks for that.
And has Meta gotten feedback to the effect that user reports would be more valuable than reports of CSAM?
Yeah, I definitely think we've gotten feedback. We work with safety experts. Nobody sort of suggests that those user reports are less valuable. That's not generally the suggestion that we get.
Will Meta also be able to provide law enforcement with other information such as metadata?
Yeah, so we will be able to indicate to the sender, the recipient of a message, when that message happened, the last IP address of the message.
In your understanding, is metadata important for law enforcement?
Yeah, in fact, I believe there's a Europol study that indicates where law enforcement themselves have indicated that that kind of metadata is very important to their investigations. In fact, highly important.
Do you expect that the quality of information that Meta provides to law enforcement will improve after end encryption?
Well, certainly, I think you'll have that sort of informational bucket will be shifted and changed. They'll actually have much more highly actionable reports.
We discussed cyber tips a little while ago. If there were 700 cyber tips reported in a year to Nevada law enforcement, does that mean 700 children were being harmed?
No, in fact, the way a report works, first of all, there could be no minor as a part of that report. It could be just an adult sharing content with another adult. So there may be no minor within any particular report. Even if there is a minor, it may not actually be a minor in Nevada. A significant amount of this activity actually happens outside of the United States, so the content may not have a minor involved, and the report may not have a minor involved. Additionally, I think it's really important to just go back to the sort of viral meme context here, which is that you have content that recirculates on the internet over and over and over and over again. Sometimes content is 10 years old. That is not content that would be of someone who's a minor now, for example.
Are there statistics showing that cyber tips are not an accurate measurement of the abuse of minors?
Yeah,
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Are there statistics on the question of measuring the abuse of minors through cyber tips?
I think there is research that's been done in this area that indicates that it's not an accurate measure. We actually have a blog post that kind of goes through some of our cyber tips and what we found there. There isn't at present really a great accurate measure for harm. Cyber tips certainly is not a highly accurate measure at all because of the things that I just mentioned before.
And has NCMEC itself put out statistics about whether the reports to NCMEC involve adult abusing a minor?
So they have some numbers, I think it was in 2022 that I mentioned earlier, where like 65% of the images that were shared are not unique and novel or new images. And I think that about 70-something in relation to videos. It doesn't mean you don't want that content shared on the internet. It just means it doesn't mean that there's a minor involved or immediate risk of harm.
Now, I think you said before that Meta does not itself send cyber tips to Nevada or any state law enforcement, right?
Correct.
And who makes that decision about sending cyber tips to a particular state?
NCMEC does. We will send cyber tips to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I do want to say, if there is an emergency situation in which we have information that a child may be in imminent harm, we might reach out to law enforcement directly, but our cyber tips go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
So if a cyber tip is sent to Nevada law enforcement by NCMEC, do you know whether that activity occurred in Nevada?
No, in fact, sometimes cyber tips can be sent to maybe sent by NCMEC to multiple states.
At this point, Your Honor, I have no further questions. Ms. Davis submitted a declaration along with our opposition to the preliminary injunction motion, and we would move to admit it into evidence as a way to save time. We know we're under clock today, and I think therefore we can move it into evidence.
So are you asking to be actually as an exhibit versus it's a declaration, so I attach the pleadings the court would be considering? I'm just trying to get a clarification of
Well,
what, and you might need to pause for a quick second. You might be about to get a note or a whisper. So pause for a second.
I was just going to note our objection to moving into evidence.
And that's why I need the clarification of what you're asking, because declarations, right, unless this doesn't apply, right, so this one wasn't stricken, would normally be part of the record for the court's consideration in a preliminary injunction. When you say move it into the record, usually the only other aspect would be either a court's exhibit, which generally it's not, although I'm not taking a position, I'm just saying in general, because court's exhibits are more unique for specific reasons, or two, it's being sought to be introduced as an exhibit, and usually declarations aren't exhibits as well. So can you just clarify what you mean so that I'm clear with
Well, Your
some
Honor,
third option you're suggesting that I'm not specifically addressing?
my thought was that it could be admitted as substantive evidence as a way to save time with the witness.
But since it's already, okay. Let me be clear. The state of Nevada, are you contesting that it's not an authentic declaration?
We're contesting that it's a hearsay document, and under Rule 65, if it's admitted, it could come in evidence at trial. So we're objecting to that. We're not disputing the court's ability to consider it, though, when determining the preliminary injunction.
That's what I was saying. I was trying to see where you really were going with that.
I mean, Your Honor, I won't press it further. I simply thought it might be efficient. I don't think it covers meaningfully different ground, but there may be some details in the declaration that are not covered in the oral exam today. It seemed to me a way to save time and be more efficient.
Based on the court's prior ruling, right, when we were discussing certain of the declarations and things that would not be considered, and kind of also going to the third parties who submitted, I'll call them briefs, whatever you want to call them. Call them amicus briefs, even though it really exists in the district court. But anyway, call them amicus briefs, right? That the court is going to consider all the pleadings and the attachments there too that it can, unless there's been a separate ruling by the court that for some reason it should not. So does that meet your needs, or are you asking something else?
I think it does, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, if you need a moment to touch base now. Okay?
No,
good?
thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, sure, no worries. Okay, counsel for the state, go ahead, please, on your
Sure.
cross-examination.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And before I get started, good afternoon, Ms. Davis. Do you have access to the exhibit binders? I believe we sent a couple of copies to the court.
They're right now over here, so we hadn't put them on, back on the
We
witness.
brought
Marshall,
extra
can you assist
copies
me?
in case, but I would just like the witness to have one copy of one plaintiff and one defendant.
We don't have any from defendant.
You're supposed to deliver them this morning, but I
We're supposed to have binders delivered this morning from defendants that we never received.
Well, my office coordinated for both sides, so I thought Polo dropped, it should be thinner ones. We do have extra copies. I'm sure they're clean.
You're welcome to go out and check in the box, but my team's looked multiple times, she doesn't saw anything in the box.
I think Mr. Hester said he was fine using these extra copies.
Judge, we did coordinate, and I did understand that the state was actually delivering all the binders to the chamber, so.
It's okay. You've got, the short answer is you've got an extra binder as well, right? Is that the short answer?
Yeah, I met a Holo guy in the hall. I didn't know if he had already delivered some to Chambers or if I was supposed to be doing that, so maybe I was supposed to do it.
somebody else did.
Once again, once we started, you can appreciate what my team has been, so go in.
So I believe
But
Your
the short
Honor,
answer is you've got what you need as long as the marshal does this one thick binder and the one thin binder.
yeah, I
Is that
believe
correct?
Meta's counsel's fine handing this copy to the witness, it's all the same.
Okay.
Multiple witnesses?
Yes. Well, is it volume two? And counsel, you wanted the volume that says 1 through 64 of plaintiff, correct?
That's right.
Okay, that's what the marshal did, and then the thinner binder that was handed over by Mr. Hester, so. You two need screening.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon again, Ms. Davis. My name is Michael Gayan. I'm counsel for the state. Just have a number of questions for you this afternoon. I know it's getting late, so I'll try to be quick. Ms. Davis, do you agree that the safety of one child is more important than Meta's profits?
I think the safety of one child is more important than serving my own child. I don't think our decision here was made based on profits.
Okay, is that a yes?
I think the safety of one child is more important than money, yes.
Okay. All right, and you mentioned earlier on direct examination a number of government entities that I believe you said encouraged end-to-end encryption. Did those government agencies encourage end-to-end encryption for youth and children?
They encourage end-to-end encryption broadly for messaging, so I'd have to look at any one specific thing, but certainly the FTC has encouraged the use of encryption. Human rights organizations have encouraged the use of encryption for minors as well.
Okay, how about under 13? Children under the age of 13?
We don't allow children under the age of 13 on our platform and take steps to remove them if they try to join our platform.
Okay, but isn't it true that Meta knows that children under 13 are on its platforms, including Messenger?
We try to remove them from our platform. If we identify someone who's under the age of 13, we remove them from our platform.
Okay, but my question is, isn't it true that Meta is aware that children under 13 are on its platforms,
We are
including
aware,
Messenger?
I don't mean to not answer you. We are aware that people try to lie and lie about their age to get onto our platform, and you can assume that some people are successful. I can't speak to any one individual.
Okay. You also testified about the 0.0001% of reports that Meta makes to CMEX, right?
It's 0.001 of the content that we find, 0.001 of our overall messaging is that content.
Okay. And
0.001.
what is that in terms of raw numbers?
I apologize, I don't have a raw number for you.
Isn't it true, in your declaration, you stated that Meta made more than 27 million reports in 2022?
To NCMEC, yes.
NCMEC,
Yeah.
yes, okay. And are all 27 million of those in the 0.0001%?
I can't, I don't want to lie, I can't attest to that in particular. I would assume that many of those would be captured in that, yes.
Okay. Is Meta able to guarantee that the signals you were testifying about before will be 100% effective in preventing adults from connecting with minors who they do not know?
I don't think we could ever guarantee something is 100% effective. As I stated earlier, people are incredibly adversarial and will try to get around our systems, but I do think that there's no one thing that solves this problem, so it's layered techniques that we use.
How many of these highly adversarial bad actors have gotten around Meta's signals and connected with minors on Messenger?
I don't have an answer to that number. I can tell you though that we've removed millions of accounts. I think between the period of August of 2023 and December of 2023, we removed 2.6 million accounts of people violating their child safety policies.
You also testified earlier about Meta's substantial investments in safety systems and protocols since it decided to shift to default end-to-end encryption, right?
Once again, for the reminder, you've got to have audible answers.
Oh,
not
yes, sorry.
others and
Yes,
no worries.
sorry.
Please.
Apologies.
Won't-
Also, do you want to ask that again so you get an audible answer? Or-
Sure, was
The
your answer
answer
yes
was
to that
yes,
question?
yes.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor, for making sure we have a clear record. Won't Meta's investments in safety be helpful whether it uses default end-to-end encryption or not?
Well, I actually see encryption as part of the investment in safety and security, so it's not that you pull that apart and it's over here and that's against safety. Encryption is actually part of securing the safety of minors on our platform.
Was it your testimony that all of the investments that Meta has made in safety leading up to the default end-to-end encryption that started just in December of 2023 will be wasted if minors in Nevada are not allowed to use end-to-end encryption?
I don't think that they will be wasted, but I think that people will be less safe if minors are not able to use end-to-end encryption in Nevada.
Why didn't Meta make those safety changes and investments before deciding to shift to default end-to-end encryption?
Well, we've been making lots of safety investments along the way in my entire 10-year career at Meta. Some of those were have been happening from well before when we made an announcement of encryption. They will continue well after encryption is rolled out. Some of these are things that we may have done otherwise. Some of these are things that we focused on particularly and prioritized doing as we were moving toward end-to-end encryption, particularly in ensuring that we would be able to continue to detect in a robust way and play our part.
Isn't another safety improvement Meta can make ending end-to-end encryption for children in Nevada?
No, I think actually ending end-to-end encryption for children in Nevada would ultimately leave them less safe. Their data is as needing and deserving of that kind of protection. It creates a vulnerability. I think children in particular use messaging to share very intimate information, especially in the context of when they're reaching out for help. Teens use messaging to reach out for help more than they're not like me, who's 55, but I might pick up the phone. They tend to use messaging much more than we do and much more intimate than I do, certainly intimate types of conversations. So in fact, they are uniquely vulnerable in many ways in their messaging, and protecting the content of those messages is incredibly important.
How many people under 18 years old in Nevada with messenger accounts asked Meta to provide end-to-end encryption for their
I'm not
messenger?
the person to ask for that, to answer that question, I'm sorry.
Is it anyone?
I have no idea, I'm sorry.
More importantly, how many parents or legal guardians of people under 18 years old in Nevada with messenger accounts asked Meta to provide end-to-end encryption for their messenger messages?
I can't speak to any individual Nevada residents' actions.
So you're not aware of anyone from Nevada, a child or the parent of that child, asking Meta to make end-to-end encryption the default setting or even available for their children?
I'm not aware of a specific individual in Nevada in either direction. What I know is that our users generally have indicated an interest in not having us or others in their messages. This is the actual trend within consumers across the country and across the globe. They want to know that their messages are not being watched and looked into by us or anybody else.
But that's not based on any feedback Meta received from Nevada.
I can't speak to any specific feedback in relation to that, sorry.
All right, well, your declaration submitted in this matter, in there, paragraph 19 specifically, you stated that Meta designed its platform so that, quote, people under 18 can only have ads served to them based on age and location, but not interests or activity. Do you recall making that statement?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that Meta, if it can serve ads based on its users' age and location, it could also offer end-to-end encryption based on age and location, right?
No, that's not actually, that's not how the technology works. I'm not a cryptographer, so I'm not the best person to answer that question, but no. And in fact, with encryption, when you have some people who participate in it and some people who don't within one messaging system, you undermine the security of that encryption for everybody. You make it less secure, so you reduce its value for all users.
But you're not a person who actually does the coding and knows whether Meta could use age and location information that it uses to serve ads and bar ads on certain people in the same way that they use end-to-end encryption.
I can't provide a technical answer for you. I can say that removing some people from encryption and encrypted messaging services undoes the security of that encryption or reduces it.
Isn't it true that Meta knew years before making the end-to-end encryption default switch on Messenger that bad actors often use Meta's platforms to attempt to abuse and exploit minors?
Bad actors, yes, attempt to abuse and exploit minors across the internet, including on our apps.
Okay. And so how long has Meta known that that is a serious problem on its platforms?
I don't know if I would characterize it as something that I would call a serious problem on our platform, other than the fact that anytime the child is hurt or injured, that's serious. But we've known that this is a problem across the internet and across our apps as well for as long as I've been at Meta.
Okay. Well, in your declaration, specifically paragraph 14, you told this court under penalty of perjury that in 2022, Meta made about 27 million CSAM reports to NCMEC out of about 31.8 million total such reports for the year. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means Meta platforms involved about 85% of all CSAM reports to NCMEC in the year of 2022?
Yes, Meta has taken a highly active approach to our work in this area. We have used our technologies across all of our surfaces in different ways, our detection technologies, both our public and our private services, in a way that most other members of the industry don't.
And you also provided in your declaration in paragraph 8 that in a 4 to 5 month period in 2023 alone, Meta disabled more than 2.6 million accounts for violating its child sexual exploitation policies, right?
Yes.
All right. And also, overlapping that same time period last year, Meta took action on more than 2.2 million Facebook accounts and 1.4 million Instagram accounts that relate to accounts that violated Meta's child safety policies, right?
Yes.
Okay, and is your testimony that those statistics don't evidence a massive problem of bad actors on Meta's platforms, including Messenger?
I think those statistics demonstrate a significant proactive approach to trying to thwart and prevent this from happening on our platform. Our platform has billions of users, and those statistics reflect a very active approach to prevent, find, detect, remove, report that kind of content.
Okay, out of the I
2
apologize.
That's okay, sorry.
Out of the 2.6 million accounts that Meta disabled last year for violating its child sexual exploitation policies, on average, how long were those accounts open and active before Meta disabled them?
I don't have that information at my fingertips. I apologize.
Okay, would you agree it takes time for Meta to deploy its signals and other safety protocols that you developed and described on direct examination?
I think some of those technologies take time to see the activity of an account on our platform. Some of those may take less time depending on the activity of the individual on the platform. It will depend on the activity, but yes, it can take time.
And if a bad actor gets in contact with a minor in Nevada or elsewhere before Meta's signals work and stop that connection, and the bad actor migrates the conversation to Messenger with end-to-end encryption, isn't it true that Meta can no longer apply any of its signals to know what's happening in that private conversation?
We cannot apply those signals to know what's happening in terms of the content, but actually sometimes when teams are engaged in that kind of back and forth with a bad actor, they do provide other signals to us to indicate there's a problem. So one of the reasons that we use blocking and unblocking as a signal is that we will see teams who may be in a kind of conversation that may be problematic block and unblock in that context because of their conflicted feelings, for example, inside of that message. And we use that to surface safety notices to try to encourage reporting.
Okay. And back to your 0.0001% testimony regarding CSAM sent on Messenger. You did qualify that statement with quote, that Meta finds. That's all that Meta finds. Do you agree that additional CSAM is likely being shared on Messenger that Meta does not find?
I would say that there's a chance that there are things that we miss. I don't think that is in relation to in this context, in relation to encryption or non-encryption, because that never actually comes from all that we've been doing.
All right, I'm going to give counsel a heads up about using some confidential exhibits, so.
Are you going to give an exhibit number, or do you all need to caucus for a brief moment? Or what do you all wish to do?
I'd suggest that you give us the exhibit number as well as the portion of the exhibit that you're planning to use, given that there are several pages in the documents.
You want exhibit blank, pages blank, blank, and blank? Is that what you're asking for, counsel?
That's correct, Your Honor, so that we are able to assess the request.
Sure. It will be exhibit 58. And primarily, let's see, page 6. And also page 7. And Ms. Davis, if well, the lawyers are sorting that out. If you could turn to the large binder, it will be tab 58. Careful for paper cuts. And you don't need to do anything other than have it open at this point. Thank you.
Just to this front page.
Yeah, thank you.
We're just pausing for, oh, sorry. Of course, right behind the monitor, there's a whole pitcher of water and some cups. Unless you brought your own specific flower, then they can get you that.
This is perfect.
Okay, sure.
You're up.
Yeah, we put it behind so that we keep the those all over themselves or anybody else. Counsel, yes.
Your Honor, we have no objection to exhibit 58, pages 6 and 7, limited to those 2 pages.
Okay. So that means counsel can inquire as he needs to inquire, and the witness can answer whatever is necessary with reference to those pages?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead, counsel.
Sure. Can I move to admit just those 2 pages and maybe we call it Exhibit 58A?
No objection.
Okay. Thank you, counsel.
Okay, yes, yes.
Just the 2 pages, 58A.
58A will be pages 6 and 7 only.
Okay, which-
But, and just, is there any objection to me having the witness look at kind of the cover page just to get oriented?
That's fine. Witness me. I look at the pages.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Davis, if you could look at the cover page on Exhibit 58. And this document is entitled End-to-End Encryption Integrity Update, and you stated June 18th, 2019, correct?
Yes,
All right, it appears to be a slide presentation.
that is, yeah, I think so.
Okay. Would you agree that by June 2019, the date of Exhibit 58, Meta knew that end-to-end encryption will dramatically reduce our access to information that we currently rely on to determine what is bad?
At the time, we were using content scanning as one of our large measures, and so this is prior to all the work that we've done to the state. This was at the point of announcement, so in reference to that content, scanning of content, messaging content, yes,
Okay, well, isn't it true that end-to-end encryption prevents Meta from scanning the message content?
yes.
Okay, and so isn't it true that end-to-end encryption has dramatically reduced Meta's access to information in the end-to-end encrypted messages?
Within the content of those messages, yes, but not the other things that we can gather from people's messages, the sender, the recipient, when they message, how often they messaged. Also, in the context of reporting, we would get the actual content of that message.
Okay? Is that a yes or a no, Ms. Davis?
I'm sorry, I don't know the question.
Isn't it true that after Meta's decision to apply end-to-end encryption, that it no longer has any access to information to determine whether the message is bad?
No, the answer is that's not the case. We don't have access to the content of the messaging, but we do have other signals that we can use to identify whether a message may contain content that is problematic based on user behavior.
Has Meta provided a CSAM report to NCMEC for any end-to-end encrypted messages?
We report based on WhatsApp, another service that we have that involves reports to NCMEC, yes. And those
Okay.
are end-to-end encrypted messages.
And how does Meta have access to the contents of the WhatsApp messages?
So we don't have access to the content of those messages, but we have other information that would indicate that they may be sharing that kind of content. So for example, on WhatsApp, they may have a profile photo that would have CSAM content that would indicate so.
Okay, isn't it true, Meta admitted on page 7, excuse me, make sure I've got the right page.
Is the numbering based on, I see it, okay.
So you're referring to the base numbers in the lower right-hand corner, which says 58-0007, is that correct, counsel?
Let me get to the right document, I apologize. And counsel, will you also take a look at page 8? I apologize.
And is this request to admit these, are these going to be admitted under seal, or they're going to be admitted without being under seal, so taking off the current designation to the extent that they have it? I'm not sure what the request is, and I'm not sure if the request was specifically stated. I can repeat what I just said if you want me to.
Our position is that the 6 and 7 will not be admitted under seal, but the remainder of the document will remain under seal.
So 58A, i.e. pages 6 and 7, can come in as a normal exhibit, is that correct?
That's correct.
That meets your needs, counsel, for the state?
It does, except I'm asking about 8 as well, and hopefully they're taking a look at that.
We are looking at page 8.
Thank you.
And I'm going to remind the parties of what specific time it happens to be, and we're going to need to figure that out in the next moment or two, as you can appreciate, right?
Yes. Ms. Davis, while we're waiting on page 8, if you could look at page 7, you see in the column on the right side where it's message content, column B, post end-to-end encryption.
Yes.
So row 1, column B, it says there will be no visibility on IG Direct or Messenger and no client-side classification, right?
Of message content,
Right.
yes.
And if a bad actor on Messenger, post end-to-end encryption, sends CSAM to a minor, Meta does not know. Is that true?
That is not true if the minor reports that message to us. So if the minor reports that message to us, the minor, as part of that reporting, sends the content from their device to us.
Okay, and so your
Or
testimony
that
is that,
adult.
But hold on a second, I can't have both individuals speaking at the same time. So just gotta remember the nice pause, and one person speaking at a time, so we get a nice clear record. Go ahead, if you need to repeat or whatever you need to do, go ahead, please.
okay. So Meta's safety protocols rely on minors to report offensive images and content in end-to-end encrypted messages sent on Messenger, correct?
Only in the context of user reporting. We also have people who share that kind of content in multiple places beyond messaging, where we detect that and be able to report it, and we'll continue to report that content.
Isn't it true that Meta does not criminally prosecute anyone?
Yes, we are not law enforcement.
And that's because that's the purview of law enforcement, correct?
Yes, I'm not an expert in this area, but yes.
Does Meta believe that it knows what evidence law enforcement in Nevada needs to prosecute a case involving a minor?
We know what evidence law enforcement may request from us to provide. Our job is actually to try to mitigate the risk of harm to our users. We have obligations under the law to report to NCMEC, but you're right, we are not law enforcement. We are not scanning our surfaces to prosecute people and surveil their activity on the platform for anything other than violations of our policies.
Isn't it true that post end-to-end encryption on Messenger, that Meta cannot know and will never know whether its prevention efforts have worked 100% of the time because it cannot scan message contents to enforce its community standards or report harmful content to the NCMEC or law enforcement?
Object to form, Your Honor, it's compound.
What's going to sustain that? Go ahead, counsel.
Okay, isn't it true that post end-to-end encryption on Messenger, that Meta cannot know and will never know whether its prevention efforts have worked 100% of the time because it cannot scan the message content?
It's still compound, Your Honor, I object.
Court's going to overrule when it say no or will never know. I mean, that's the
Well,
common
I
portion.
mean-
So that's the court's ruling. Thank you. Witness can answer.
I'm not sure what question I'm answering, I apologize.
The question I just
Sorry, can you
re-asked.
just repeat it? I
Sure.
apologize.
Isn't it true that post end-to-end encryption on Messenger, that Meta cannot know whether its prevention efforts have worked 100% of the time because it cannot scan message contents?
Even in the context of scanning message content, we cannot know 100% of the time whether our efforts are working. That's not a measure that we would be able to make.
Okay, Ms. Davis, yes or no? Isn't it true that post end-to-end encryption on Messenger, that Meta cannot know whether its prevention efforts have worked 100% of the time because it cannot scan the message contents?
Your Honor, objection has to be answered.
Sustained.
And because Meta cannot know that its prevention efforts have worked 100% of the time post end-to-end encryption on Messenger, that means if Meta's prevention efforts fail, and a bad actor starts messaging a Nevada minor on Messenger with end-to-end encryption, Meta is powerless to detect or help stop any harmful content in end-to-end encrypted messages.
I'm not sure.
Objection, Your Honor, compound.
If you don't mind, pause for a quick second so I can address the objection.
Objection, compound.
Okay. That one I need to sustain because they're two different concepts in your, the ending of that long sentence.
Okay,
On either side of your or.
because Meta cannot guarantee that its prevention efforts will stop bad actors from connecting with minors in Nevada, host default end-to-end encryption on Messenger, Meta is powerless to detect harmful content in end-to-end encryption messages unless the user reports it, right?
I don't think we are powerless to detect. We are powerless to scan that content. That's the point of encryption. But through both user reporting and connections made on the platform, we're actually in a pretty good position to identify people who may be trying to cause harm.
How many pieces of CSAM has Meta reported to NCMEC on end-to-end encrypted messages sent on Messenger since December of 2023?
I don't have that number.
Is it any?
I don't have that number.
Could it be greater than 0
It could be greater than 0, yes.
for messages that were not reported to Meta?
I don't have that answer. I'm sorry.
All right, Your Honor, I don't know if now is a good time to talk time management, but
Okay.
I know we're late in the day.
It's 5 minutes of 5, so it's gonna be comments of that, right, state and federal law, time, et cetera. Okay, so, council, why don't you tell me what your wish list is, and then we'll see if we can accommodate the wish list, or I can, you all had a chance to speak between the two of you all to see if you have a joint wish list, or not? Okay, then would you like to know where the court potentially is, and then see if that meets your wish list? You want to tell me your wish list first?
Well, I do have further cross-examination from Ms. Davis and was anticipating hearing from Mr. Archibong to address certain issues related to the court's personal jurisdiction questions and also feasibility and burden to the extent it's even relevant. The state's not conceding that,
Councilman, that was a simple,
well, I don't know.
did you want me to tell you what the court might have available, or did you want to tell me what your wish list is first? It was really just, that was my simple question.
I was I'm happy to hear the court's intent.
We're talking about just pure timing availability. Would it be a correct statement that both parties would like some additional time? Is that a
Yeah.
correct statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, Your Honor, one of our principal objectives would be to finish up
Yes
this.
or no, counsel? Would you like more time, or would you like to end it right this moment? I just
I'm
need to-
sorry, I didn't understand.
No worries.
Apologies. Yes, we would like some more time.
I really appreciate the loquaciousness of excellent counsel, but we really got, I mean, this is simply some scheduling, folks. Okay. I was going to tell you that, no surprise, with excellent counsel and different issues and a multitude of issues, I may have moved things tomorrow afternoon, so I have some time tomorrow afternoon. I need to know how much time the party, well, first of all, do you want tomorrow afternoon? Please don't ask me for Friday afternoon, because I have a separate 4-hour-ish evidentiary hearing.
On behalf of the state, without conferring with the whole group, yes, that works for me, and I believe we would take that. I appreciate the court's time.
Would it be okay, Your Honor, if I just consulted my client for just?
You have to do it really quickly, because you realize you have to be appreciative and fairness, right? It is the 5 o'clock hour. I have a wonderful team, but I have state and federal law with overtime issues, folks, so please be very 60-second brief.
We will be really fast, Your Honor.
Do you wish to just stand at this juncture?
Could you say tomorrow afternoon, I have a commitment at 12, potentially to 1. Would that tomorrow afternoon begin at 1:15, 1:30? What would that be?
I was going to ask you all how much time you think you need, and then we could fix this.
Fair,
time,
okay.
right? So, but the answer is yes, it could be, to answer your direct question, yes, it could start at 1:15 if that's going to meet everybody's needs, okay? I just need to know how much time parties need. Is there any reason to keep the witness on the stand, or can she go stretch her legs and sit where she'd like to sit?
Your Honor, I don't see any reason to have Ms. Davis sit up there,
You all agree, don't you, counsel?
as long as she comes back at some point.
I need somebody from the defense side to tell me if you're requiring your own client witness to continue to sit on the stand while you all talk.
Apologies, Your Honor, you can tell.
Okay, good.
Counsel, you are.
Mikey and Horacio,
Okay.
I'm in for hockey.
Yeah, no worries. Just we're gonna ask you to sit there. If you need an answer, so something yes or no's. Thank you so much.
Your Honor, David Slade for the state. We just wanted to remind the witness that she remains under oath while she's off of the stand. If she talks to anybody outside her.
I'm sure her counsel have cautioned her on her impact if she starts talking to people while she's in the middle of her testimony. If they haven't, then I'm sure somebody will do that as she walks.
And Your Honor, maybe because we have outside counsel here who may not be familiar with our rules about talking to a witness that is in the middle of testifying and the waiver of the attorney-client privilege, so it might be helpful to them all. Mr. Peterson obviously is well aware of that.
We've had that discussion.
Wait, you guys all can't talk.
Hold on a second, we got lots of people now, we recognize. Oh, yeah, no, appreciate it, Mr. Jones. My court recorder's just reminding people that when you start talking, we need to have you say your name, because right now it's gonna just show as a voice. No worries.
Judge Jones, on behalf-
Everybody important in my team
Mr.
is.
Polsenberg, can you let Mr. Jones say his name first, and then we'll get to you in 1 second?
No.
I'm gonna redirect that you have to, give it a second, please, thank you.
For a gag order.
Mr. Jones just spoke, okay. We're just trying to get folks, and I really appreciate the great camaraderie. We just need each time you're speaking to say who's speaking, otherwise you're getting a record of
Got
unknown
that.
voices, that's what we got.
Dan
So, Mr.
Polsenberg, my whole team's left. Can we wait till they come back?
The only specific question that was pending, just so that you I don't understand, I think you understand what the question
I
is.
do understand, I know the law in Nevada about witnesses, so, and I know that Tammy does, and so he doesn't have to worry about this.
I wasn't worried, for the record, Randall Jones, I wasn't worried, I was just trying to do them a favor, but.
Okay, so I think everyone's being courteous, okay? Short answer is, you may get off the stand. If you say anything, talk to your counsel first before you say anything, because there could be impacts, okay? I've directed that to the witness in the most generic sense. I leave it to the counsel to advise the witness how they wish to advise the witness. But you're welcome, if you like that seat more comfortably, you can stay there. If you'd like to go back to a different seat, feel free to do so. Thank you so much for this purposes, but you are in the middle of testimony. Thank you so much. No, I'm just saying, okay. There are specific requirements if a witness is still in the middle of your testimony, since they have not excused her for all purposes, like we heard with the first 2 witnesses. So certain things that witnesses can and cannot talk with certain people. I cannot advise you, I'm a judge. So Mr. Jones was nicely saying, since we have a lot of out-of-state counsel, to make sure that people knew so that you didn't inadvertently do something. Mr. Polsenberg was reminding that certain people already know that when conversations happen, which I think Mr. Waite started to say before Mr. Polsenberg walked back in. So the short answer is, if you're going to say anything to anyone other than can I go down the hall and go to the registry, please make sure you talk with counsel, okay? You're on counsel. Does that work for everybody?
Thank you.
Okay. So,
So, Your Honor, we have 2 difficult issues. One is we would like to finish with Ms. Davis and get her off the stand. But Mr. Archibong, it's not clear he's going to be available tomorrow. His wife is imminently due to deliver a baby. So we cannot commit right now that he would be available tomorrow. We have, it's just a personal problem that we.
you understand the court's not requiring anyone to appear in person. People are more than welcome to. Be potentially remote. You may have an exhibit issue that I have to talk about in just a quick second, right? But of course, the court accommodates people who have various issues. Well, short answer is, do you want to take some time tomorrow to get what you can get, and you'll see if you're witness, right? He'll know, is he intending to stay overnight, or are you requesting remote appearance? What are you requesting?
Well, I mean, I think we may need a remote appearance from him just because we don't know about his wife's situation. I just wanted to alert the court to that.
No, I appreciate it. Can someone email him any potential documents that you might need to be utilizing at a few minutes before he does that, so you can take care of that issue if that's your issue? Is that your only issue?
Your Honor, we go ahead.
Yeah, we
That's
certainly.
Mr. Gayan, on behalf of
Yeah.
the state, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. We certainly have no objection to him testifying remotely, especially under those circumstances, so we can email exhibits ahead of time, or maybe talk to the court staff about using Zoom features to share documents that way. I don't know if that's even possible, but we'll figure something out.
Your Honor, the other point I would just make is from our perspective, we would be content closing today. We would not need to call this Mr. Archibald, and we would be content with stopping, but I understand the state's position is that it wants to continue with this witness.
The state has not used their 90 minutes. It was agreed upon each of the parties would have 90 minutes, right? Trying to anticipate that there would be some colloquy at different times, so it didn't utilize all the time, but you can appreciate that in cross-examination, the court's not going to say they have to end their case.
I understand, Your Honor.
Okay, so, unless the state wanted me to say so, but I'm hearing the state doesn't.
No, the state certainly is reserving certain questions for Mr. Archibald.
I'm sorry, I mean even with Ms. Davis, are you?
Oh, even, no, we're not ready.
That's what I was going, you're right in the middle of cross-examination, same thing as if you're in the middle of cross-examination, directed, right? We're not gonna say, guess what, your case is over, and I'm gonna want a preliminary injunction at 5 o'clock and not give you all any summation or argument. I don't think anybody who's prepared before me thinks I'm gonna do that, I'm not.
I understand.
So, to give everyone a full opportunity, right, you all here, let's get you taken care of. So, that being said, on the simple answer, tomorrow, understanding one council has a different conflict. Does anybody else have a conflict if I start at 1:15 tomorrow afternoon? If somebody tells me they have an afternoon conflict and is about to ask me whether I have the morning available, you can appreciate Tuesdays and Thursdays are my business court mornings. So I have some of your colleagues in business court. I actually do not have either of you tomorrow morning. Or when I say either, I mean any of the councils here, so I can't say you pick your case. But I do have business court matters and 9 civil law and motion matters. So there's and some of those, most of those enjoy, including pro se litigants. So you can estimate that I have to have a lot of different things I need to take care of in line of that. Whether the individual shows up or not, I have no idea. Whether or not the extent of those, but there's multiple hearings involving pro se litigants, which is why I did not offer to say, if I was looking at this differently, I could potentially say 10:30, but once again, possibly even 10. I didn't want you all sitting there waiting, and then everybody says, guess what, we have to break for lunch, or people have other commitments, which is why I offered you the afternoon, because I have more control over the afternoon, because I specifically cleared that as a just in case. So, what do you all want?
Your Honor, Randall Jones for the state. I would just say, how much time does the court think it can give us? It's really, I guess, the ultimate question. We'll take as much time as the court can give us, and it is what it is.
Okay. Being considered somebody who has a conflict in another hearing and not knowing who's going to go to tomorrow, not to start before 1:15. That makes 2 weeks, does it not, counsel?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So we start at 1:15, right? And we can go to 4:45 Pacific time, and with a afternoon break. And that should conclude everybody's. Now, I'm fully cognizant when I say that, it's one of the witnesses for defense, if they wish to call them, I'm not going to preclude them from calling them. I'm going to hear whatever I need to hear tomorrow when I see what the situation is tomorrow. I'm going to offer the opportunity to appear remotely if that's of any assistance. I understand there's no objection by the state, and 613 gives me the ability to do so, and you all can work out your exhibit issue, because that's really sending some things electronically. And you can get that taken care of. So does that meet the needs of the state, or are you requesting something different?
It meets the needs of the state, Your Honor. Randall Jones on behalf of the state.
Thank you so much. How about on behalf of Meta Platforms?
Your Honor, simply to clarify one point, Mr. Jones said that he'll take as much time as he wants. I understand that the court has given us each 90 minutes, so we're still on our 90-minute allocation, correct?
That's one of the other reasons why the court's saying that we're going to continue it tomorrow, because, right, remember, hearing goes from day to day and was concluded by the court, and since you all have been exhausted your 90 minutes each, and in fairness to everybody, we're going tomorrow, right, unless all parties told me you couldn't. And if that, then you'll have, not there. Okay, so, well, I appreciate people say they go as long as they want. They understand what the court's, right? In fairness, you all agreed for today, splitting the time is where you get to the 90 minutes each, right? With some caveats, because obviously there's been caveats. Okay, does that meet everybody's needs? See you tomorrow at 1:15. Now, if anybody needs to leave things, which is oftentimes the next question, I'll answer your question just for a moment, counsel, or at least finish this sentence. Okay, so anybody needs to leave things, counsels for plaintiff, feel free to use that area over there, counsel for defense over by the marshal. I just don't know how many attorneys I'm having coming in tomorrow. If you really think you need the back table of each of your respective areas that we could tell you in this back table, I need to leave the front tables, council tables free because of other individuals who may be coming in tomorrow. And once again, I don't know exactly how many those are, but if you want the back tables, you can use the back tables. If not, you can use the areas that are pointed out on each side. And it takes care of that issue. Council, you have a question. Go ahead, please.
David Sneed, on behalf of Meta Platforms. One quick point. To speed tomorrow and make it more efficient, it would help if the state would be willing to communicate which portions they were seeking to
Council,
have.
would this maybe be a conversation between you all, maybe in the hallway, in fairness? Because if you want to start saying your points, then I appreciate the state's going to want to explain their points to the court, right? At this juncture, it's scheduling, and I'm going to say, have a nice evening, and feel free to talk in the hallway, right? Because it's not a substantive issue, and you're the court's intervention. I appreciate you all. Thank you so very much. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.